are awesome. Well, for an hour of today's cardio, we are going to be doing a rock march. Marines, we call it humps. Going to aim at a 15-minute per mile pace throughout the whole thing, or average of that throughout the whole thing. So let's get it. Okay, so I am almost 28 minutes into it. Only 1.77 miles down. Filming takes a while to do, so if anybody wants to be my film person, that'd be great, but we'll have to boogie on the way back. I just ran like 0.15 miles thinking I was recording the whole thing, and I wasn't. It's so sad. Oh my goodness. Whew. I went 4.15 miles in an hour and 21 seconds with an average of 14 minutes 31 seconds per mile. Okay, everyone, so today's video is going to be on flowers. Like the flowers behind me. Actually, this is my wife's wall, not mine. I figured it would be a good centerpiece for the video, so, you know, it's pretty. Like, I just kind of want to share the experience I had of doing sobriety work in the beginning. So if you've watched my first video, you'll know kind of how that went, the disclosure thing went with my wife, how I told her about it. And I hadn't really ever opened up to anyone about my addiction before, except for the occasional church leader here and there, but not really doing anything to overcome it, really. So the first point that I wanted to go over is different struggles that I had when I started doing recovery work. And a lot of these struggles came from shame specifically, and I do want to do a video on shame. If you do want to know more about shame, Brene Brown talks a lot about it and has done a lot of research and studies on it. I haven't listened to a ton of her stuff yet, but I've really enjoyed what she's put out. I put 3 struggles that I had. The first one, feeling lonely. After I told my wife about my addiction, it was about a month before I started working in a recovery group, and I felt very lonely, isolated, and a lot of that was because Kiara didn't trust me anymore. She felt betrayed, which she was, and didn't really feel comfortable being around me, and I felt very lonely. You know, that was something that was really hard. I've always wanted companionship, always wanted relationships, good relationships, and since I had really pretty much broken that relationship with my wife, it made the first, honestly, like 6 months of recovery work really difficult because I felt very alone. After telling my wife about everything, not knowing where to start, like how to do sobriety work and recovery work, I didn't know where to begin. It was very hard. I'd say probably the hardest one was not knowing if I was worth the effort it would take to change. Because I hoped that change was possible. I believed it was. I wasn't sure that change would work for me because I had tried so many times to change in the past. But when I joined the group that I started, it was a lot of work, you know, and they were very upfront about that. It's going to be a lot of work to change to overcome this, and I didn't know if I was worth the change or worth the effort it would take to change it, or, you know. So those were a few of the struggles that I had starting out. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was questions that I had during the process of starting my recovery group and, you know, starting the new life that I was trying to create for myself. The first one was, would God actually forgive me? You know, I felt so much shame and guilt around what I had done. Well, mainly shame. Shame and guilt are different things, but I felt so much shame around what I had done. Like, I was such a bad person. Like, I didn't think that I could change, and I didn't think that God would forgive me because of how bad of a person I was. So that was a big question for me. Another one was, will my marriage be able to make it through this? You know, I love my wife, and I love her even more now, and I was so scared of losing her because of my addiction, that I was just so worried about my marriage. Like, what would it last? Would it even be a good marriage if it did? The last big question I had was, would I actually be able to overcome my addiction? And the answer is yes. You can always change. You can always grow and improve. For those of you who have had addiction, know it's very hard to realize that you can change. You know, that you are able to change. I'll answer the other one about God as well. I believe God already has forgiven you. You can talk about that more later, but the big part is you just have to accept it. So the third thing I wanted to talk about was what helped me in this process. Honestly, the biggest thing that helped was working on building a relationship with God. You know, that hands down one of the biggest things that helped me was discovering that God does love me, that he has forgiven me, that he has always been there for me. I just haven't always been in a place to see it. Next thing was starting or joining a recovery group. The Men Are Running group, like I've said before, is a addiction recovery self-mastery group that I started in, and it was honestly super beneficial to know that there's other people like me, that I'm not the only one that struggled with this. You know, and being able to talk with some of those guys outside of the group setting helped a ton. I was able to learn so much more from them. That's where I first learned about EMDR. One of my good buddies was doing EMDR at the time, and he would call me after sessions and talk about it. And yeah, so that's where I learned about EMDR and had created a desire to do that. And the last thing, which the group I was in focused on, was learning more about myself, learning about emotions. What are they? What am I actually feeling? Learning how I want to feel and how to get to a place where I don't feel shame, and how I get to a place where I don't feel like I'm just a piece of trash. The last thing I wanted to talk about was what my relationship was like with God. Most of my life I felt a lot of shame around God, and just religion in general. I think that came from the culture that I was brought up in. I felt a lot of shame around the choices that I'd been making, the addiction that I had, and when you have an addiction that starts at a super young age, it's hard to have self-confidence and self-love. I didn't think that God loved me, or I didn't think that I was capable of being loved by God because of how fundamentally gross and disgusting I was. Like, I just felt like trash. If I felt like trash, why would anyone love me? You know, why would anyone love a piece of garbage? You know, and so I had a hard time opening up to God and asking for his help, and I always felt like I had to change first before I could feel God's love, which is not true. When I first started my recovery journey, it took a while to get to a place where I could hear God. It took a while before I could get to a place where I could feel the love that he had for me. When that happened, it was awesome. And I know without a doubt that God has always loved me and he's always been there for me. The thing that was missing was me. It's hard to have a relationship that's only one way. I'm so grateful for the relationship that I do have with God now. You know, and wherever you're at in life, whatever you think you are loved by God. I promise you that. You know, so for those of you that are starting out in your recovery journey, I hope that you do take the chance on yourself to put in the work, to get to know you, to get to know what you want, and to actually live the life that you want to live, because change is possible. I'm witness, like, you are able to change. You are able to become better and become stronger than you ever thought possible. You can be a blessing to those around you, to your family, to your friends, people you don't even know yet. I hope those of you that are struggling with an addiction, whatever it is, I hope more than anything that you guys take a chance on yourself, because you're worth it. You have value. You're not disgusting. You're not gross. Some of the things you've done might be, because some of the things that I've done definitely have been, but you are not a piece of trash. You are a good person, and it's easy to forget that, especially when you've never thought that you had value your whole life. And I know what that feels like, and you're not alone in that. If you guys would like, feel free to comment, give a thumbs up, subscribe, share it with people, because this is what this channel is meant to do. It's meant to help other people. So yeah, love you guys.